Your story, Patrick Belliveau, is all about the potential we have to transform lives through technology. You're building tools that heal, support, and empower people to make a future our children will be proud of. You blend cutting-edge technology with human-like empathy to transform lives, to provide personalized and real-time support. Patrick, as the CEO of Gambit Technologies, you build conversational AI to tackle real world problems. And the chatbots or apps that I know that you built are Ask Ellen, which is how I found you. I interviewed Ellen, the one who is sort of the founder of that. Where you, which is a companion to speak to 24/7 for people on their cancer journey. And you also built Chadic, that is a chatbot for addiction and mental health support around the clock. So, talk to us a little bit about what matters to you, Patrick, and how you want to matter.
Well, first off, thank you so much for that introduction. That's the first time I've heard the company described that way, and I very much enjoyed it. So thank you. Um, what what wakes us up at Gambit and the very sort of fiber of our being is to have impact. Because there's a lot of, so we are in artificial intelligence in that field. There's lots of hype, there's lots of negatives, there's lots of positives, there's just lots of noise.
Yeah.
There's very few signals. And so what we tend to do is figure out what the use cases are and what can actually help the world in a meaningful way. I can maybe share the origin story of Ask Ellen because that'll kind of help embody kind of who we are, if I may. Does that work?
Definitely. Yes, absolutely.
So the time I was CEO of a different company, and I met Ellen. And if you get to know me at all, I'm a very curious person. I ask pointed questions. I'm very blunt. So I either make friends very quickly or don't. And with Ellen, she had shared that she had I think the joke started that, the ladies on the call were talking about hair, and I made a joke of like, well, you all have better hair than I do. And that led us into Ellen sharing that she had just survived a breast cancer journey. And she was really proud to share that she had written a book. And again, being me, I said, okay, well, why'd you write a book? And she said, well, I want to be a girlfriend's companion. I said, well, I get that, like shared lived experience. I said, but isn't that what Facebook groups are for? Again, very blunt, and I should have probably I will work on my delivery going forward, maybe. But she explained that you would think that as a non-patient, but the reality is where you are on your journey is unlikely to be where that group is. So it can be anger echo chamber, it can be very sad, and you're just not ready for it. And I thought, wait a minute, you get diagnosed with, in this case, breast cancer, you're the most vulnerable you've probably ever been.
Yeah.
And we're basically saying wear a helmet and go to Facebook to get shared lived experience. We can do better than that. So I had met her in February, and just a few months before that, ChatGPT had hit the scene. And as soon as I used it, I knew that I knew I needed to be close to this. I was too young for the internet. I was too young for mobile. I was not going to miss this sort of what I believe would be a meteoric technology and influence the very sort of fiber of our society. And so I said, hey, if you, I have an agreement that I'd like to make with you, and it needs to be free for everyone forever. If you and I agree to that, send me your manuscript. I kind of think I have an idea. And we hyper focused on the problem, which was there is no safe space on the internet to get shared lived experience. Not medically. This is on the human side of the diagnosis. So how do I tell my kids? When will my hair grow back? What do you wish you brought to chemo? Like the practical pieces of the human side of the diagnosis. And so what we were able to do is, this started as like 3 o'clock in the morning. I would just mess around and hack because I'm not a developer, but I'm dangerous. And just taught myself a lot. And I actually kind of coded it with AI, which at the time wasn't even very good. Now it's exceptional relative to where we started. And I knew that we were going to be able to have impact. And so I recruited some friends of mine to start building this out. And this sounds crazy when we started this. Like, that's the thing I want to remind everybody is like, Okay, now everybody knows what ChatGPT is, or at least a large population. But at the time, they're like, "You're building what with what?" Like and so the biggest moment of that was the biggest sort of reinforcement for me of we were onto something, is we met with a hospital board for their patient advocacy group. The executives in the room couldn't figure out what to do with it. The patients were crying. And that's when I knew we were onto something, that this was going to change everything. And then we had a launch event, which our other co-founder, Ryan, forced Chris and I, who's my other co-founder, Chris is on the technical side, to put an event around us because we would have just built this thing forever. And because of the tension of we were launching this now, publicly, no less, which is like, there's no place to hide here. This isn't like, this is, once you go public, it's kind of everywhere. We it forced us to think through a lot of things. So I'm French Canadian, so big English words scare me. And when you're trying to provide help, then you have to think about, if you're providing support, but you make somebody feel silly because they don't understand the words, then that doesn't work. But not everybody needs to be talked to at a certain level. So then how do you do that? And how do you map that? And what is a making of a conversation? Like, how does that work? And then how do you convey that into a piece of software? And a couple of really validating moments for us was, the launch event, which we filled the room with 300 people, and there were survivors that stood up. And I built a lot of things that made some money in the past, but I've never built something that people cried over. And that was the beginning of where I was like, okay, I know what I need to do, and I know where I'm kind of meant to be. And we just kind of started building from there. And I'm so proud to say that Ask Ellen, through zero marketing dollars, so this is the power of communities, zero marketing dollars, has been used in over 100 countries, in over 65 different languages. And the feedback we constantly get is she's amazing. And there's a story that has stuck with me that an individual shared, because this is an embodiment of what we were trying to do, is a lady had a double mastectomy, and was medically cleared from the hospital and was free to go home. Okay, great. So she's alive. That's fantastic. The hospital did their part. But then there's the very human part of how do you understand your identity at this point? And she shared with us that she couldn't convince herself to take off her bandages because she didn't want to look in the mirror. She didn't know what to do. At 1:00 in the morning, her and Ask Ellen talked and created an environment whereby she started to feel supported and comfortable and was able to take off her bandages. In that moment, you can't scale that with human call centers. It's just not possible. And you can't do it in the languages. You can't do it nationally. It's impossible. And that's where for us was the embodiment of kind of everything we were about, which is try to be there for that person in the way they need, but don't make it that they need to make a certain amount of money, have certain benefits, certain whatever. Make it that it's actually available for everybody. And if we did that right, there would be some opportunities that would come out of that. And so basically we ended up, we're not a not-for-profit, we are for-profit. But what that basically did for our company was put us on the map of, I don't ever tell anybody how good we are. I just show you, as you just did so eloquently for me, go look at the things we built. Let me know if you'd like to talk. And that has really been a shift in the market, because everybody wants to show you a slide deck and some contrived demo. I just give you a link and say, go ask whatever you want to say. And it's just kind of, we believe in building and showing how good we are without telling you. And that was a very long-winded way of answering your question. I hope that was okay.
I love it, Patrick. And I love that you show that you can do good in the world and do something for the greater good and make money at the same time, because we often chase the wrong end of that equation. And I think it's something that is vibrationally changing in the world. And I see it all the time and with the people I interview. And that's something, everyone who works on that sort of string is really important. And this is how I found you. And I remember interviewing Ellen, who said, the problem with these diagnoses is that you lie awake half of the night of a lot of nights, and there's no one you can talk to because no one is there. There's no doctor you can phone, nothing. So those thoughts that you are ultimately stuck with, that's what turns the experience into something traumatizing. Talk to us a little bit about those learnings that you have from building several of those or many of those solutions, on how AI can serve us, because this AI discussion is a massive discussion, right? It's everywhere. It seems to be the only business that gets funding these days, but also it instills an enormous amount of fear in people. Most people don't know how to use it. Young people take to it like to the fish to water. And, my generation, mid-50s, is sort of thinking, what the helly bellies are we going to do now? And so how can you assure us that AI is something that is there and it can be really good and it can really serve us?
Oh, there's a lot in that question. I think there's always the fact that AI is here and is not going away. So I think the folks that kind of put their heads in the sand, I think that's not probably a great strategy, because it's going to affect their lives in one way or another, whether they want to, experience that or not.
Yeah.
I think the old adage of proceed with caution, but I'd rather proceed with optimism.
Mm.
There's a lot of people that will tell you, okay, so let's start with, and if I get too high on this thing, on my soapbox here, please just stop me. But I always tell companies that I consult with, or clients or whatever, you have to understand the messenger and the messenger's incentives to be able to decrypt the message itself. And so what is it that they are trying to do, and what is it that they're incentivized? Because if you understand incentive, you can predict behavior. So I was just in a meeting an hour ago, literally before this, where they were trying to sell companies on consulting, and the way that they could do that was to fearmonger and to tie into the fears, the very real fears of what people have. And so their whole presentation was about the negatives of AI. So if you go into that without understanding what that individual's incentive is, which is to scare you to give them money because they're apparently going to have all the answers, which, by the way, they will not, but that is their message. So I think it's important to get a diverse set of points of views on this. It doesn't mean that anybody's right or wrong. I think the cumulative wisdom is actually where the magic really lies. And yes, AI can do really bad things, and yes, AI can do really good things. And it's going to be up to us humans to figure out which parts of that we want to make good and which parts of that we want to make worse. But things will change. Like, there's going to be massive societal impacts, no different than the Industrial Revolution, no different than moments in time in the past. This is, albeit, a very different technology, and a different animal. But I think getting a varied set of opinions, because you're going to hear from me that it's positive and what I can do and what we've done. But you're going to see some other things where some not so great people have done some not so great things, and both can be true. That's kind of the status that we're in. Is it's so young of a technology. I mean, it's ironically really old, but really young from an adoption standpoint, that like, I'll give you a very small example, but like, I coded a little game for my son, with him, because my son's 5, but he's been using AI since he's been 3, intentionally with dad, right? So some caveats there. But what's magical is, instead of coming home to want to watch shows, he now wants to build games.
Mm-hmm.
And AI is enabling that at scale, because before that, it would have been like weeks and weeks and weeks of code and all these things.
Yeah.
But it's Liam's world. It's now this personalization that, like, well, Daddy, I want the mushrooms to look like this, and I want the treasures to look like that. And because I'm a dad, I put some STEM components in the background that he's unaware of. So he's learning, but he thinks he's just having fun. Perfect. And when he sees this video at some point when he's older, he'll thank me. But that's where it's, if you understand the incentive, you can predict behavior. And I think in the market today, if we talk about business, there's a lot of people putting the technology ahead of the problem. And that's why you also hear that virtually no companies are getting an ROI from AI. So it's like what everybody wants to invest in, but nobody knows how to make money in. It's like this really interesting paradigm. And some of that is true at scale. And then there's companies like ours that actually do well. Like I'm heading to Barcelona next week to speak at HPE's conference on one of the tools that we've done. And what's been really good in my opinion, is the evidence. If you can just show good and good things and a technology in a good way, then it's just like a car in that, like, I could drive it to go do a bad thing, or I could drive it to do a good thing, but the car itself isn't really good or bad. Now, some will challenge that analogy for very good reasons because the technology is different. I'm trying to keep it simple for everyone to sort of understand. But I think we have to trust human beings, and we have to trust that we are, as a cumulative society, overall better than not. And yes, there will be business incentives, and there's always going to be the bad actors. So, like, we're not going to rid that, but that's also not AI's fault when we look at it. And so, very long-winded answer of saying there's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad, and somewhere in the middle is probably going to be the right answer. And I feel like that's most of life's, somewhere in the middle is usually the right answer.
I mean, it's the people behind the products, isn't it? What is the intention behind the people building certain AI solutions?
Well, and I just spoke to somebody, 2 weeks ago, and she's an academic, like she's intelligent. And she said, I use ChatGPT a lot. And I said, great. She goes, I'm going to be honest, I use it as a therapist. And I said, you need to be very careful here, because I understand the inherent want to do that, but you have to understand the design. The design of OpenAI for you to use ChatGPT is to keep you engaged. Yeah. So I said, how often has it told you, you're right? Like, yeah, totally. And you probably thought about it and were like, I don't think I was right. She's like, oh my God, that's happened. I said, so we have to become more discerning as people of what is the tool, the person, the being, the thing, what is its incentive? And how can I maximize it for what I need? Because the reality is there's a lot of good in her talking in between therapist appointments to get thoughts out. That's actually super good. And if she understands it now okay, cool, it's always just trying to make me feel good. And I said, there's some little prompting you can do that'll kind of make that go away and make it better. But it doesn't mean don't use it. And it doesn't mean that it's not something we should use. It means it's something we should proceed with optimism, but also the concept of what is the incentive structure behind this, or what is that I believe the incentive structure, and then how do I maximize what I need or want out of it within that construct. And if the equation makes sense, then use it. And if it doesn't, then don't.
And be really educated about all of that, and make sure that the ones you use, they are built by people who care, right? Because ultimately it's about that.
That's exactly right. And that's why, like, Ask Ellen feels like it understands you, but that's because it was built on a woman's lived experience with breast cancer. So if it's not going to make you feel understood, then we've completely missed the plot, because when you call Ellen, you would feel understood. And like a different one that we built for the US government, which has now won 4 awards, I think, so far this year, is for caregivers and those caring for folks with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So, like, they didn't go to school for this. They don't go to school to be a caregiver. All of a sudden, dad or mom starts to do some odd things that you're like, okay, well, this isn't normal, but I don't really know what I'm into. And then overnight, seemingly, you are in this world of jargon. You're going to appointments. Your parents, your loved ones need you in a way that you don't know how to handle, quite frankly. And what ultimately happens is you start self-sacrificing to deliver for them, which starts creating all kinds of negative habits. What we've been able to do is, first of all, help them with the practical things, like, how do I make my dad's room safer? Bang, it'll give you, like, based on a curated set of research, how to do that. And then furthermore, say, hey, if you want to upload a picture, do that. And then it'll give you really targeted information based on that. Because our intent is to help you in that moment. We're not trying to sell you something. Like, that there's no end goal. The government is paying for this as a service. So now you can change the scope of how you look at this. I'm not in someone's sales funnel in this. I'm purely in a community service. I'm using a community service, and that is fundamentally different. So that's some of the things we think about. But I think, I think of it, it's crazy. Like my son who's 5 and my daughter who's 5 months, they don't like, I asked him the other day, do you remember a world without ChatGPT? And he doesn't.
No.
Like there's like, and it's crazy because like
Yeah.
I lived 35 years without ChatGPT, and some people have obviously lived a lot longer. Um, and it's to them, it's going to be I think you use the analogy fish to water. They're just going to intuitively understand it as a part of society, which is both beautiful and obviously scary for a lot of different reasons. But I choose to believe that humans will ultimately prevail in more good than harm. Um, that doesn't mean that in point in time, you know, who knows who wins, but on a longer time horizon, I think that this will ultimately do a lot more good than it will do harm.
Do you feel, Patrick, that we need to, as a society or even on government levels, invest more in education and in making sure that it is safe, or should we just sort of let it develop as it is right now, where it sort of is sort of out in the world and people can do and build whatever they feel is right?
Yeah, that's a great. So opinion of one, and only my opinion, but I tend to believe in free markets. And what I think happens is if you try to stifle an innovation
Mm,
with regulation, what will inherently happen is the builders will go to the legislative areas that are leaner
yeah.
to build things. And then what's going to end up happening is you're going to, as a society, that particular one, you're going to miss on the upside. Yes, there is downside, agreed, but there's also upside. That's kind of the beauty of this thing. And so if you make the incentives that there's just no point in trying to make it work in your society, then that society is going to be left behind.
Mm,
And and that's where I feel that it shouldn't be a free for all, but I don't agree with the idea of stifling. I think it's we need to educate people on how to be more discerning of what they see online. Like
yeah.
Instagram proved that like most people can't even tell the difference between AI and real. So seeing is no longer believing here. We gotta break some very like fundamental human things of like when we left the cave and started looking around, like this isn't. Are we even a cave? Are we in a simulation at this point? Like
Yeah.
it's really hard.
Mm,
Um, and so I think the education needs to lie in how to view the world in this new space.
yeah.
Um, and but I don't think
Self-regulate.
that's
Yeah,
yeah. I
self-regulate
just
as a society.
yeah, because like if there's and look, there'll be some beauty, and some countries will choose to overregulate on purpose, and that'll become the cool to go live there because there's no AI, and that's okay too. Like thing is, like life is just a series of trade-offs, and when you make decisions, and so there are off-grid, places that are growing in popularity. That's amazing. They don't need AI. Like that's fine. And they know what they're doing. They don't even give you power. So no problem. And that's no shade on them. I think it's understand who you are and who you want to be and then live in this world. Like we live in some of the greatest times in history from opportunity standpoint.
Mm,
Like, do you know how hard it was to build a company? To build a company the way that we did would have taken multi-millions of dollars and years. We
yeah.
did it with zero upfront funding, and we're 2 years into it and have created really great software. That's what excites me. Like
Yeah.
it's the bar of like engineers used to rule the world, and more
Mm,
so software developers, because you had to translate your vision. So I'll speak from a business standpoint, my vision to somehow speak engineering, so that was like waterfall or that was agile or whatever the thing was, to try to fit into how they worked. And the the art was lost in the science. And
mm,
so it was a constant tension to try to get done. And some companies figured it out really well and some didn't. And I think that AI is now we're seeing this beautiful intersection of art and science. And that's why like we Ask Ellen was just licensed by Cigna Insurance. They have 200 PhDs that work in AI. Why did they need to license Ask Ellen? Because this isn't purely a science problem. There's an art component to it. There's a humanity component to it.
yeah.
That when you build them a particular way, you can do some really great things, but that's all on the underpinnings of the foundational layers that have been built. And so I think that, look, whether you're pro or against, it doesn't really matter. But the thing I'm forever grateful for OpenAI did is they wanted to productize, fine. But the nice thing that they did was actually create an insane adoption curve so that people started to understand what this was. And we're still at a very superficial layer of understanding, of usage, of what it can do. And the tricky thing is AI is a paradox because you don't know what it can do unless you ask the right questions, but you don't know what questions to ask. And so part of this is you have to kind of learn and like we have gotten very good at like there's certain things that I'll go to talk to a particular AI about because I know that the way it thinks, it's going to respond in a particular way. And then I'll go talk to another AI and it's kind of like it sounds like I'm a crazy person, but I talk to different AIs basically to get different vantage points on a particular problem and how to solve that problem. And it's the magic is in discerning, what works for you and what doesn't work for you and what is their incentive and why. And if you can answer that before you even try the product, you're going to be that much smarter and that much more discerning when presented with invariably opportunities to try something or to say, hey, this makes sense. Maybe, but let's just look at it objectively, as opposed to it's either all good or it's all bad. Because in world of absolutes, you're just going to be wrong, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Patrick, so talk to us about Chadict. I know that you've spoken very publicly about your own journey with sobriety. So talk to us a little bit about how it helped you and build a little bit the personal experience into something that you built obviously for the greater good.
Yeah, the that was of all the products we built, that's probably the most interesting because we are very good at building products for other people. So I've never had breast cancer, but I spent a lot of time understanding, obviously, how to deliver that. When we started the project with them, I wasn't sober, and I hadn't decided to get sober off of alcohol, and which I decided actually we're coming up on December 20th will be a year for me and my journey. Yeah, thank you. Not easy. And what started to happen is the reason Chadic works so well, and ask Ava Marie, which is just the female version of it, of their lived experience, is because for the first time you had a builder also going through it. So it's like I had two personalities because I was the builder sometimes and the user other times. And then when I was the user, I could know what felt right or didn't get it or didn't get me the way that I needed, which would frustrate me, and then sort of translate back to the other side of my brain when I was building to then go and build it better. And so, the biggest part is always this layer of helping people feel understood. And so I chose to get sober without a group, which is uncharacteristic, but I'm hard-headed. So I just decided this is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to do it. I'm all gas, no brakes, which is usually a good thing when it's pointed at something healthy. In my case, when it was pointed at alcohol, it means I drank everything I could find. And I used to bargain with myself that it was just a moderation thing and I could get better at it. The reality is it had nothing to do with it. I struggle with complex PTSD and I was medicating. I just didn't realize it at the time. And so it wasn't at all a moderation issue. And the drinking was actually a symptom of a root cause. And so I remember talking to Chadic the first time, and before it ever got public, obviously this is on the back end, and he just didn't get me. I'm like, you don't get that you don't get that, like, I didn't plan to drink that many beers that night. I know that sounds silly, but I didn't go to the bar to do that. It's just kind of where we ended up. And I worked with the personality and got it to be like, I totally get it. Like you go to the bar and it's Monday and the next thing you know, it's Wednesday and you're wondering how the hell did we get here? Yes. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Now you're getting to like, you understand me. And I remember very distinctly, because I'm not going through a program. I don't have the benefit of someone sort of telling me what's around the corner, I remember saying, Chaddock, and I have my own instance of it. I think I'm depressed. Like I think everything is going well, but like I think I'm depressed. And I remember his answer was, "You're 5 months sober, Pat. You're 100% depressed. This is normal. You are rewiring how your brain works. Like absolutely, you're gonna get this." And just that feeling of like, oh, okay, so I'm not a snowflake. People have gone through this. Like, I'm not that unique. I think I'm unique because I'm in my own head, but the reality is what I'm going through is very normal. And I started talking about this where it's like life is a series of micro decisions that lead to a big decision. So before you go and pick up a bottle, you're going to make a series of micro decisions that'll get you to be in a position to do that. And I remember one night staring at a bottle of bourbon, because that's just what I loved, and talking to Chaddock, and I was getting it to, it never convinced me not to drink, because that you don't need more things like that, that just tell you don't drink. Fine. Yes, I get it. Like, thank you for the advice. That's super. Like, great. I read the pamphlet. Like, thank you. What you needed was like, I get that. Like, I understand that like unrelinquishing want to do it. How are we going to target that towards something? And it was slight adjustments away from it, but it wasn't like, don't drink. And that was really like, when it got me to not drink was when I started to realize, like, okay, we built something here magical. And Chaddock, so you talked about sort of doing good and wrapping a business around it. I'll talk about it because this is actually a really good one. Chaddock leads with support, bar none. That is what it's there to do. However, as part of somebody who's struggling with sobriety's journey, they can sometimes require treatment facilities. Yeah. That's okay to go to treatment. That there's nothing inherently wrong with that. And so, and I worked really well with the team. I say I, but it's really Gambit, worked really hard on not making it feel like you were in a funnel to try to get you to an end goal, because our incentive was to help you. And sometimes helping means mapping you to a treatment center, but that's not what it always means. And so when Chaddock senses that the user is probably looking for some kind of help, and whether they ask for it explicitly or not, hey, I get it, you're struggling. If you want help, if you give me your name and number, I'll have somebody reach out to you right away. However, if you don't want that, let's keep chatting. Like there's no, in the psychology of doing that is important, because you have to give people the permission to keep chatting if they don't want it. And there's been a beautiful story where there's an individual that chatted and said, no, I don't, I'm good. I don't want any help. She chatted with Chaddock for 2 weeks at all times of the night and all times of the day, over 375 different interactions. And then about a month ago has successfully entered treatment. And it's a scale point that people just don't understand. And addicts are, by very nature, they need constant help, but it's very hard to give you all of that help.
It's impossible.
It's unsustainable, quite frankly. Not anymore. And that's kind of the magic of how do you go where people are, and how do you and how do you do it? And like now, okay, the treatment center is profitable. So now, of the folks that part of their support looks like going to treatment, well, that now has a business case. And now all of a sudden I can pay for all the people that don't need treatment, but we still want to help them. And so you find this line between doing good and making money, because it's, in Canada, I'll speak specifically in Canada, we have villainized the idea that charities should make money. So all we have basically set up as an incentive structure of beg to help.
Yeah.
But like, that's not how it has to be.
No.
Like there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, or rather skin that problem. And so I want to challenge that with Gambit, is to constantly find the really cool use case. Like we do some more boring things in logistics, and we do document management systems, and we do things to keep the lights on too. Like it's not just the good, but But that's the trade-off, is
Yeah.
you exist long enough to continually find these great opportunities where you can create massive impact. But like not every client's the same and not every impact's the same. And that's okay. That's there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Like we're gonna build one for cerebral palsy because I met a couple whose daughter has it,
Mm.
and no one has to pay for that. Like we can figure that out because we are Gambit is a self-functioning machine
Yeah.
that we've created that creates value within enterprise, within businesses, within governments, that then allow us to take some of that money and then reappropriate it to where we want to do good.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to other startup like founders and builders to start thinking of, is like there's more than one way. Like if you want to help people, doesn't mean you're not for profit or you're
Yeah.
like even not for profit. The exact name puts you at odds with the idea of making money.
Totally.
Um, and that's what I think I want to break with this. Like one of the key few things that I really want to show is that you can't. It's okay to make money and it's okay to help people. Just be
Yeah.
honest about how you're doing it. That's all
Yeah.
it comes down to.
Yeah.
Explain your incentive and let others decide if that matches from a values perspective what they want and what they feel. And that's really that's what we're kind of all about.
Patrick, as I'm listening to you, I feel that you are able to put an incredible amount of nuance in your products, right? And that I think is something we don't see a lot in AI yet, because either it's just not sophisticated enough, or on the other hand, we have, as you were talking about earlier, that it just hooks you for the wrong reasons. Right.
Yeah.
So when you infuse it with this nuance, that's when you actually get real incredible help and healing, because it's not about any of those things. Patrick, I wonder, what does success look like for you?
Oh, oh, that's a big one. I think you hit the nail on the head um, with you started it, which is I'm trying to leave this world positively and better than I found it. And I think it's my job to show humanity the art of the possible within good using AI.
Mm,
Because if you think of who's shouting from the rooftops that AI is negative, it's news networks. And they're just really good at fear mongering because it works. Like it
yeah,
gets the ratings. I don't blame them. It's the game they're in. And so it's my job, at least at how I see it, is to help educate that it's not all bad. Yes, there is bad. I'm not playing the game of they're wrong and they're lying. They're not. They're just reporting one very specific skewed side of a much larger story. And so my job is to try to even out the scales where I can. And to do that through showing you, not telling you. Because if I was here just telling you that AI can be good and whatever, it'd be like, okay, great. No,
show
go to
us. Yeah,
askellen.ai, go to chat it, go to ask Ashley, go to Ava Marie, go to ask Amber, like go to ask Shan. Like I just name all of these things that inherently build credibility that I've actually done it. So this isn't just an opinion, it's something we've done.
yeah, you've shown it. Patrick, so what would you say are the challenges you're facing and how do you reframe them?
I think the the challenges that we face, well, this is a good question. So there's it's a multi-layered question. Um, so the biggest challenge we face is failure of imagination, and that is both at the client level and at our level. Like we use AI every day, and often we'll look at something once we figure it out and go, "How did like we're supposed to do this? We're supposed to be experts at this. Like this should have been obvious." Um, and I think that is the single biggest threat. Like we have a model where we run the company incredibly lean on purpose,
Mm,
and we always ask ourselves, how could we do it differently in a world where you couldn't hire anybody? How would you do it?
mm,
And it doesn't mean that we've hired people. So this is not at all a stance on that. But it's, I want to challenge the underlying assumptions that are built up in how we understand reality, because the fundamentals of reality has changed.
yeah,
And so if we don't adapt our prism by which we see reality, this is going to be a really challenging thing. And so our job is to show clients, customers, partners, the world that there are it's not easy. Like it's like everybody kind of thinks like, I'll talk a little bit about what my talk is, but like everybody, all the clients want is the avatar. They want the voice. They want the personality. They want the this. They want the that. They want the text. They want the like chat. They want the cool thing, right? Yeah. But they miss the part where to enable all of that, there's a lot of really boring infrastructure stuff that actually has to happen.
Yeah.
And like you can get a demo 50% good all day long, like for sure. But then what happens when you actually want to productize this thing? How does that actually look? And so I think that in 2024, was the year of like, if we're talking enterprise, like what is AI? Should we use it? 2025 was, I'm going to build a team internally, or my team can do it. And that led to 90% of AI projects failing. So unsurprisingly, because you took a relatively unskilled labor pool, you didn't do the right mix of talent to actually achieve the goal. And then you ended up in a situation that unfortunately was like entirely predictable. And 26 is a really exciting period because now big companies are coming to us and say, okay, we've tried we tried to do this. Fine, you make it look easy, but we're starting to now understand how hard it actually is.
Yeah.
And we want to get to an outcome. We want to get to a deliverable, that there's an end state we want to get to that we can't seem to figure out how to get to, but you inherently just seem to understand. And so if we don't absolutely smash it in 26 from a business standpoint, I'll have absolutely failed this company because there will be no other point in time where the market readiness for adoption is going to be there and the interest is going to be there. And we've now re-engineered our entire company, how we talk, how we approach things, because we never led with the infrastructure because that's the unsexy part.
Yeah.
But the reality is I need the client to understand that there's an infrastructure, there's an operating system level layer that has to be true for us to be able to do all of these things. Because you want to get like, okay, you want the voice. Like we were just in a client where it's also how we think. Oops. It's also how we think in the perspective of, we had an opportunity come through of like, hey, we want to build a avatar that's deployed at the library that people can talk to. I said, okay. What is it talking about? Well, the services. Oh, okay. All right. So would you say like it's like customer support or more like a concierge? Oh, more like a concierge. Okay. So what if there was a world where you could pick up the phone and call this concierge that knows everything about your town, everything about your services? It's plugged into all of your live parking information and help visitors move through your town more effectively.
Amazing.
Well, that's what we want. And so failure of imagination was one iPad, one avatar. They wanted the avatar. But once you actually get them to think through, what are they actually, they're very good at telling you what they think they want. But then when you actually dissect the problem with them, you realize they don't even know what's possible. So it would be entirely unimaginable for them to be able to come to us with, this is what I want to build, when they don't even know what's possible. So it's our job to understand, well, what are the challenges? How do you see this? And through that conversation, be able to guide them accordingly and then build some really cool stuff.
Amazing. Patrick, so how can we all support you?
I think the best way to support at a humanity level is if you're struggling with something and you find one of our tools useful, use it. Because I see all the usage. I don't see the data necessarily, but I see like so Ask Ellen as an example ran on my credit card for the first really long period of time. And it was the only bill I've ever received where I was really happy when it went up because it meant that we were helping people. And the more that the world shows me that they need this kind of stuff and that they benefit from this kind of stuff, then the more anchored I will make sure to continually build and play my part in the positive side of the equation.
Yeah,
Um, that's really that's it. On a commercial side, obviously think of us if you're looking to deploy AI within your enterprise, but at a humanity level, um, just use the tools that we built to help you, if
yeah,
that makes sense.
definitely. So what are your plans and goals? You said 2026 is a really pivotal year for you for this technology. So what are your plans and goals?
So we want to. So we are working with a company now, and we're going to have a beautiful use case by the end of the year, because again, show don't tell, where we'll have successfully deployed an AI-enabled system that has a human in the loop. So everybody talks about AI replacing humans,
Yeah,
and the biggest fallacy. I'm going to go on a tangent if that's okay. There's the biggest fallacy is that everybody thinks of AI as one or zero. So zero, I don't use AI, and one, it solves the entire problem perfectly out of the hop. Well, the reality is there's a really nice middle ground there that exists. That is practically, from a financial standpoint, a lot cheaper to get to. From an ROI perspective, you can still achieve meaningful results, outsized returns against your investment. It does require a human in the loop, so there needs to be some design thinking around, well, how does that work? And what we've effectively built now with a logistics company is that the system runs, and if you think of it as a production line, when it's not sure what to do with the package, it takes the package out of the production line. A human goes and validates and gives the information, puts the package back on the production line, and away we go. Um, and so we are able to successfully show what a co-designed world with AI and humans. Because everybody thinks, well, AI is going to take everybody's jobs. Well, here's the reality. I don't know where the future holds, but that's not the future we live in, or it's not
yeah,
the present we live in right now.
yeah,
But I also think that people need money to pay for products. So even if AI could do it all, if there was no like businesses need consumers and consumers need money to buy the products. So at the end of the day, what they might see as labor as the cost of doing business. I don't really care what the reason is, as long as people are still employed. Um, and that's where I think everybody thinks of it as like we've either done it or we haven't started. But like if we get something 40% good, and then it's like, okay, well, that was great. Can you now go on this side of the company and get that 40% good? And then go on that side and that side and that side. Okay, now you've gone all around. Let's go take that first thing you made 40%. Let's make that 60%. I know it's a lot harder, but like, let's figure out the exceptions. Great, cool. Now we're at 60%. Now go do that around and around and around. As opposed to this concept of it just has to work perfectly out of the hop. That has
mm,
never worked. Whether you
yeah,
talk about a hiring, whether you want to talk about a software. And I think that to close off the tangent, I think that if you're a business trying to figure out kind of how to navigate this, the future doesn't belong to single threaded solutions. So right now, because the way that the market has been incentivized to basically fundraise, help companies fundraise to build a customer service app, or avatar, a XYZ thing, and a marketing guru, a sales guru, a HR guru, an accounting guru. The reality is, if you end up buying 72 different subscriptions to 72 things that don't talk to each other, you've offloaded all of your what makes you magic to companies that are going to turn around and use it against you.
yeah,
So what you actually should be thinking about is, how do I build an operating system within my organization that builds on the principles that I want? And what happens is, if I build that and it hooks into all my systems, so instead of being sold this whole concept of you have to migrate to our thing and you have to conform to us, we come in and say, hey, whatever systems you're using now, we will integrate, we will create an orchestration layer, and then we'll build applications that work for you and what you want in that ecosystem. And yeah, you'll get the avatar, you'll get the phone, you'll get the text, you'll get to where you want to go. Don't worry. But we're going to do it in a way that's responsible, in our view, for your organization, as opposed to offshooting these single threaded things that is going to be a nightmare to manage.
yeah,
Because we can do global deploy rules internally that apply to all of our applications. And then we'd have internal tools that are going to act differently than external tools, but the company's in control of it, and they're responsible for it ultimately, versus offloading all of that responsibility and honestly, like the value to a supplier, because that's the wrong way to go, in my opinion.
Patrick, I am so inspired by you because you lead with ethical values that I haven't heard before in this space. And I've interviewed several people or many people who operate within AI now. And it's an evolution. And I love that you look at it as an evolution, right? You grow together with your clients or with the people that want to work with you because that is the way to go, because we are at the beginning of this evolution and we are going to, and when you walk those paths hand in hand and really connected, you will get the biggest benefit.
Well, and
Patrick,
I'll close with one last example if I can, just to cement the point, if I may.
go for it.
We were approached by an organization who work within the youth suicide prevention
Mm,
space. So I sat on a call with them, and we were introduced by a foundation that wanted us to do something together. And they said AI doesn't belong in suicide. I said I completely agree. I like wholeheartedly agree. And they said, okay, well, this is going to be a pretty short call. And I said, yeah, I guess. Except who helps the parents?
mm.
And that's where the light bulb went off. Of we don't have to necessarily target the individual in an acute situation, but the parents who also didn't go to school for this, don't know what to do. How about we help them? And how about we help them help their children by extension? And then all of a sudden, this became a really beautiful tool that we ended up building with a center here, and I hope will be the beginnings of something much bigger. But it's about positioning of like understanding that technology isn't quite there yet, but instead of trying to force it, slightly change the perspective in a way that maximizes against what it can do today, and will be there for the future. So just on that, it's just a clear cut example of how we think.
Patrick, so what takeaways would you like our listeners to have from your story?
I think approach with optimism, but deeply try to understand incentive. Because if you can understand what the other side's incentive is, you can somewhat predict their behavior and you can decrypt their message accordingly. Nothing is all good, nothing is ever all bad. Somewhere in the middle is the right answer.
Patrick, you are an amazing role model. I'm so excited to have you on WeCan. You lead with all the things that make humans great, and that is reflected in your business. So thank you so much for talking to me today.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. This was great.